The title what I have decided is Colonial Writings and the History of Northeast India. That is according to the theme of the seminar, because we are going to revisit and reconstruct. When we revisit and reconstruct history, now all over the world, not now, it is about 2 decades old or 1.5 decades. The decolonization of theory, decolonization of history, decolonization of methods are practiced. In India, we have not yet started the way it is expected that we should start. But small efforts in this direction that we are trying to make here, that how we can analyze colonial writings critically and how we can revisit or reconstruct history of India, Northeast India, sorry, not India, Northeast India. So, thank you all friends from here, from Tripura University, young research scholars, for giving me this love and affection and inviting me again and again. I treasure this love. I honor it. Friends, this lecture is Colonial Writings. Title of the lecture is Colonial Writings and the History of Northeast India. Yesterday from keynote address we have seen that marginalization of history was taught by Professor and how 1906 when Edward Gate wrote History of Assam, he talked about marginalization. Still we talk about marginalization. And the marginalization still we feel. Still we feel means anything history of India, the history of India in the East hardly crosses the Gangetic history. It originates Ganga Yamuna Doya and ends into Padma Bengal, but Khatam. Northeast is not in there. And if you see some of the writings, I should not say mine, but I am deliberately telling it, some of the writings of mine, then I highlight that how even in the 21st century, history of India is marginalized. And the problem is, the publications are from Government of India. Money is spent by Government of India and not even a single article beyond the Indo-Gangetic plains in the East. And the scholars, I don't want to say deliberately, but maybe knowingly or unknowingly, they don't want Northeast to feature in their writings. Either you see my book on slavery, or you see my book on technology, or you see my book on pre-colonial period, you will be aware with. So, unfortunately, when we write about history of Northeast India, our sources mostly starts with colonial writings in the form of ethnographic accounts as well as archival records. And we have a number of scholars, they simply say, pre-colonial, what are you talking about? We had our senior colleague from in Arunachal, later on he shifted to Mizoram. Professor J.L. Davar. Long he was in JNU, then Arunachal, then Mizoram. And he used to say, Bhai Amarendra, तुम क्या करते हो pre-colonial, pre-colonial, pre-colonial कुछ था? ऐसे ही तुम pre-colonial करते हो. And when I got the chance to write the book Pre-Colonial Arunachal Pradesh, I thanked him in the acknowledgements. He thanks to Professor Jagdishlal Davar, who always told me कि भाई अमरेंद्र pre-colonial कुछ नहीं है, and it made me to work on pre-colonial, and this work is the evidence of pre-colonial Northeast India, Arunachal Pradesh. And I'm happy and proud, to be honest, in the last 36 years plus serving in Northeast India, I have done my bit towards history of Northeast India. So the problem is, our sources starts from colonial writings. And colonial writers, either in their archival records, in their notings, in their files, or colonial writers in tribe-wise ethnographic accounts, they have their own biases, they have their own attitudes, they have their own purposes. I will give another example, friends. 23, yes. I edited a book, not purposely, but to commemorate 20 years of my first book on slavery in Northeast India, that is Arunachal Pradesh. And I'm telling the colonial bias. Thank you. And I'm telling the colonial bias. British officers, ethnographers, they were writing about institution of slavery, bondage, serfdom, servitude in Northeast India extensively. By 1790s or beginning of the 19th century, anti-slavery movement became so strong in Europe, especially England, that what officers started writing, there was no slavery in Northeast India. If it was slavery, slaves were not slaves, they were paupers. Slaves were treated like the family member, and based on colonial writings, some of us Indian scholars, those very few of us have worked on slavery in Northeast India. My book came in 2003 on slavery in Arunachal. Professor Sadarnath's book on slavery, he has given very nice title. His book came on slavery in Mizoram in 2016. Then 2023, one edited book has come under me, where I have tried to put from all the estates of Northeast India. Two articles are from Tripura. One deals with slave trade, and another article is on institution. And what I am telling you, friends, and this is recent, that based on those colonial writings, we Indian scholars, without looking into traditional reality, we also wrote there was no slavery in Northeast India. Whereas I have in my field study collected, slaves were sold and purchased in their lifetime, some slaves 5 times. Is it not slavery? Slaves were purchased from Arunachal, Assam to Nagaland, and from Nagaland, when Naga people are able to gather 100, 200 slaves, they were bringing all those slaves to Silchar, and in Silchar, anybody, any community don't take offense of it. Bengali traders had big warehouse godowns to keep slaves, and when the number was good in number, then European traders were coming Silchar, and 200 to 300 slaves in one go they were purchasing and taking to Europe. Is it not slavery? That's why, friends, I especially appeal to young friends that when we read colonial writings, we have to see from various perspectives why they were writing it. They were simply negating the institution of slavery mainly because if they accept in India that slavery is here, in England, pressure groups will pressure government that why don't you abolish slavery there? So British officers were negating it. And just I share one example. My whole lecture, what I am trying to discuss it with that. The colonial writings that is used in the discussion today enfolds all those works carried out and published under the sponsorship of British administration, and also those unsponsored works taken by the administrator, officers and Christian missionaries in their individual capacity. The paper raises some reasonable questions why and how the ethnographic works were undertaken, what are all about textuality and contextuality in the works, in what ways these ethnographic works have contributed to develop what is called colonial ethnography/historiography in India, including Northeast India. Madam Chairperson, I will come to Tripura also. Rajmala, Serenimala, because in Nehru we had one paper and I was doing that, medieval polities. And in medieval polities, Tripura was coming in, and once I went to Tripura University, then I was discussing, then Professor Sukhendu arranged one gari for me, and he saw to it that I visit Purani Haveli and those traditional religion and how transition has taken place, and I used to discuss this to my students in MA, and there I was dealing with that paper. So madam, I will come to you at that point also. So what happened when colonial writers they started writing about, they did not look into the multiplicity or differences, but broadly they termed the people of Northeast India, especially those people, in those ethnographic items, they are manifested ultimately in the representation of tribes of Northeast India as primitive, barbarous, savage, white men, headhunting, opium eaters, etc. And the famous title of the book by Hammondorf is The Naked Nagas. Deliberately, if you see the photographic representation of tribes of Northeast India, deliberately, women or girls without breast, those they were photographed in that condition. Some of the photographs, when they were photographs I have seen, while they were on trade, they were carrying 30-40 kilo load, climbing on the hills. And then photographers have taken the photographs and they were telling the women were walking naked. When the woman is carrying 30-40 kg load, can they have Victorian gown or Victorian skirt or Victorian sleeve blouse? And both showing the skin and morality was equated. Longer the length of the skirt, longer the size of the sleeve, higher the morality. That was very, very wrongly put to Northeast India. And they simply said to European eyes, these ethnographers, tribal people of Northeast India were nothing but queer and exotic. Since the West knowledge of the East cannot be fully appreciated without identifying the political context within which the East becomes an object of that knowledge, the colonial construction of the tribes as isolated from other tribes and their social processes as static have to be viewed within the broader context of colonial state's search for establishing an order and legitimizing for itself, and in its attempts to locate the strange, quote-unquote, strange, within a familiar and hence comforting frame of reference. And friends, what happened? During independence or even after independence, the first generation of historians, with due respect to all of them, or even the second generation of historians, the Ranjanian model of writing history based on archives so much dominated that the historians on the basis of archival records were committing so many wrong writings, so many wrong histories. That is not their fault, because at that point of time, the Ranjanian method of writing history, which was based on archival records, dominated. And it was perceived that Northeast India, nothing pre-colonial period. Here is a problem. And just I have given some examples. The opinion of L.A. Vedder regarding the tribes especially is the representative opinion of the colonial writers. He writes, quote, driven into these wild glens by the advance of civilization up the plains and lower valleys, these people have become hemmed in among the mountains where, pressing off each other in their struggle for existence, they have developed into innumerable isolated tribes, which is totally wrong. Totally wrong. This year, don't think that I am promoting myself, I am just giving example. I have written a few papers on trade. Thanks for very lavish introduction, which I don't deserve. I have written a paper on trade and travel in Northeast India, which has published in Indian Historical Review, ICHR Journal, this June 2025. If tribes were isolated and tribes were innumerable, isolated, then how trade contacts existed during pre-colonial period and trade was continuing in the modern political boundary from Tibet to Arunachal, from Arunachal to Assam, from Assam to Bay of Bengal, Dhubri. Trade was there from eastern Arunachal Pradesh, Satya, Upper Assam to Singpho-Khamti territory, Singpho-Khamti territory to Burma, and trade was coming up to Bhamo in China. Whole Bangladesh, Khasi Jaintia traders were trading with Bengal. A number of trade routes were there. During medieval period, northern bank of Brahmaputra had very good trade contacts, and that's why the concept of, the system of duars developed. Gateways, where from the hills a number of roads were coming and traders were assembling at duars, and duar trade was there. Then how the writings we can say that tribes were cultural isolates? Not true. That was another policy of divide and rule. That was another policy of divide and rule. We will come to it. Basing upon that, K.A. Raja, the administrator of erstwhile Nepal and the first lieutenant governor of Arunachal Pradesh, he also wrote, numerous communities in the earlier stages of material culture had moved away over centuries into these hills. They moved in batches and stages depending on pressure exerted. Each batch was self-contained, please keep in mind the word, and lost contact with the present stock and related groups in the course of migration. Every fresh arrival pushed those that followed it from place to place till they all reached their present habitats. These movements accelerated and intensified the diversification. Friends, it is not true. If we see the foothills, the migration of myths, migration of ideas, movement of traders, movement of trade items, yak tails, जो मंदिर में भगवान को ऐसे ऐसे हवा लगाते हैं, नोबल्स को राजा के घर में भी हवा लगाता था. In Bihar we call it चमक. What was the source? Yak tail was coming from Tibet. And if yak tail was traded in every household or even every temple and every nobility, how we can say that they were cultural isolates and there was no trade contact? Kauri होता है ना, white cells. Kauri is in every tribal culture, part and parcel of it. And Kauri was coming through sea trade. And Kauri was accepted as a cultural item, economic item in every household. Then how we can say that they were having no contact with outside world? Because British wanted to write like that. British wanted to write like that. When Tirok Singh, Khasi Hills, was defeated by the British, there was going to be an alliance formed in which Singapore, Raja, Bisagam and lot of dams were going to participate and make that. I have government record of it. That they were trying to form an alliance to fight against the British. Recently, I got in Sagar, quote unquote, the first freedom fighter of Northeast India, Prof. On him a book release was there and I was invited by Tiger Home group to speak. And Prof. was the first after 1826-28 to organize a joint front of Singapore, Khanti, Thai, Home, everyone, and they wanted to plunder and defeat the British. Much before Utirotse. Please understand it. And there was an effort to make tribal unity. If tribes of Northeast India were isolates, then how this unity was attempted for? British deliberately did it. Hey, 10 minutes. When we talk first generation of historians, I can cite these many examples. Without any offense, without any disrespect, some are no more, most of them are no more. Prof. Bhattacharjee gave the title, The Problem of Hill Tribes. असम के लिए हिल ट्राइब्स प्रॉब्लम है, तो आसामी भी तो हिल ट्राइब्स के लिए प्रॉब्लम था. Are you getting my point? Here is a cultural bias, here is a political bias, here is an archival bias, because Professor H.K. Bhattacharjee depended upon British records. Trade and rate, these two are essential component, or these two were essential component all over the world between hill and plain relationship. Trade and rate. Rate was highlighted so much by the British that trade and cultural contacts did not attract them because they wanted to divide. And I can cite just one, two. R.M. Lahiri, those who do deal with modern history must have an accessor of Assam. And if you read carefully, which belonging to outdated in technology historian. मेरा बेटा बेटी ही कहता है पापा आपको कंप्यूटर आता नहीं है, छोड़ दीजिए. And my research scholars, so they don't think me कि sir, okay, तुम लोग करो. That's why outdated. Quote, R.M. Lahiri writes, please understand how was the first generation of Indian historians writing wrongly. Gradually, the whole of northeastern frontier containing a variety of races, not simple tribes, he is writing races and sub-races not to be found elsewhere in India, was brought within the pale of an enlightened British administration. Was it very, very exploitative British administration, or it was an enlightened administration? You can judge. Resources of India, Northeast India, were drained to inland. and other colonies. And we are writing enlightening British administration. Because Amarendra depended upon all archival records. And his analysis is based on that. The approach of Lahiri is also clearly expressed in the conclusion of one of his chapters. This is in his preface. And in one of his conclusions of the chapter, he writes, such was the country he is talking about Assam, such was the country Assam that came under the possession of the East India Company after the Treaty of Yandabo. And here, truly speaking, for the first time in their long annals of victory and conquest in the vast subcontinent of India, the British seemed to step in as saviors rather than as conquerors. But Assam was a liability rather than an asset. The British government had taken over a country with a meager income, a scanty population, and a troublesome frontier beyond which dwelt a predatory neighbor. Please understand how our first generation of historians, depending upon British records, have completely, I don't want to say wrongly interpreted history. In the preface, he writes British as enlightened British administrator, and in one of the conclusions of the chapter, he is writing British were as saviors. If Assam would not have been, or Northeast India would not have been profiteering for the British, so why they established tea gardens, why they established wine, why they established coal. The limestone of Meghalaya, please, young friends, the limestones of Meghalaya established the city Calcutta. I am repeating it. The limestone of Meghalaya established the city of Calcutta. There was no limestone. Mr. English was the trader and he was given monopoly over it. And it is said that Mr. English had how many boats to carry limestone and he had no idea. And limestone from Meghalaya was carried to Calcutta and the city of Calcutta was made of it. On archival records, Dr. Amarendra is writing that Assam was a liability. Please understand, it was not an asset to the British, which is completely wrong representation. Friends, another very big story of Amarendra. We all are proud of his book, Planter to Swaraj. And I request young friends, when you read the book, please read cover to cover. तो आप लोग जो करते हैं कि सॉफ्ट कॉपी मिल गया, कंट्रोल एफ किया, हमको जो काम है त्रिपुरी, एक भी नहीं है त्रिपुरी, छोड़ो उस किताब को आप 300 पेज का किताब को you don't devote even 300 minutes on it. No, don't do this. My request is this, which I don't know. Amarendra writes that Arunachal Pradesh and Manipur is out of the purview of this study. And the argument he gives, they were not ruled from Assam. Forget about typing mistake or typing error. 1929, 39, those are very, very immaterial to me. But you see, how based on colonial records, even historian like Amarendra missed it. 1873 forest laws was applicable to everywhere. Arunachal was not an exception. 1843 abolition of Act 5, 1843 Slavery Abolition Act was applicable to Arunachal. Arunachal was not an exception to it. When cartography came, mapping started by the British for administration. This hill, Arunachal Pradesh also got classified into different hills. When forest was controlled, 1873, rubber, जो Tripura में है, rubber was one of the very important source of income of tribal people of Arunachal Pradesh during pre-British period. I am emphasizing pre-British period. When forest laws came, reserve forest, this forest, any community, please don't take personal. British gave license to Bengalis and Marwaris to tap rubber in the hills of Arunachal Pradesh. And chiefs of Arunachal Pradesh, 1893, they plundered because they said the rubber belongs to us. How you can control our rubber? Please understand it. When forest laws are applicable, when revenues are applicable, when trades are regulated, when abolition of slavery is done, then Amarendra says, no, they are not part of Assam administration. We cannot consider them worth to be written in this book. And this, I can give so many examples. I have written a few articles on it. 2015, Neha session in Aizawl. For the first time, I ventured into this colonial ethnography, and that was in 2015 in Neha session in Aizawl. And friends, those days I was young, I had more energy, more power to read and write. Now I am getting old. छोड़ो, एक होता है ना, a sense of complacency. छोड़ो वो एक को नाई लाहे. There, if you see the difference between French ethnographers, American ethnographers, British ethnographers, and if you see ethnographic trends pre-1857, ethnographic trends post-1857, ethnographic trends in 20th century, just read my article, if you are not there, if you want shortcut. And there I have given numerous examples. Journals came at that point of time, and those journals were according to the choice of those, either in France or in America or in England. And they were writing that history. However, friends, critique of this has started coming. Whole ethnography. About 21st century, when scholars all over the world started looking into it, Nicholas Dirks is one of the leading scholars who criticized this castes of mind title of his book is. There is one chapter on archives and inherent bias in archives. And if we look into Nicholas Dirk's quote, the archives are the dominant source of history, and the same is also realized by even the subalterns. However, that was not established for national history writing. Historical writing either concerned itself almost exclusively with the British in India or treated India according to the stereotype concerning village community and Oriental despotism. The whole Oriental despotism, debate, changelessness, those things were already in the mind of the British, and British started doing that, and archives is one of that. Clearly, Dirks is asking for a careful exegesis of archives by modern day historians that will not really compromise on the agency of the subaltern, not a complete rejection of archival and library researchers. In a similar way, much like I have argued earlier, no need to quote actually. Now, under postmodernism, where Madam Chairperson's argument, objection, but in title Tripura is not there. I am sorry, I would have focused on Tripura. It would have taken me hardly 1 week, 10 days. But I thought, okay, wait, shortcut mein kaam chala leta hu. See, when we see colonial bias and how our own literature, when we say our own literature of pre-colonial period, medieval period, and we have very strong tradition of Burunjis in Assam, Chaithodol Kumbaba tradition, and Puyaj of Manipur, and here we have Rajmala, Serenimala, and analysis also of it. I will give only one example, then we can have some, if more clarity is required, you can ask me, we can discuss that. I will give you only one example. Sinful tribes of Arunachal Pradesh in colonial records were regarded as plunderers, looters, and a point comes when British records indicate that Sinfos attacked Assam, captured thousands of slaves, and beautiful young girls were kept by them and made wives. Rest others were sold in the hill societies of Burma, Nagaland, and even up to China. Because China was rice economy, labor incentive, they needed labor. So slave was required in China, right from beginning. But, again I am telling, but Tunghuya Burunji, which is exactly the contemporary Burunji of Tunghuya chiefs, Tunghuya dynasty of the homes, or lineage, better, not dynasty, Tunghuya lineage of home rulers. They were the last rulers. In Tunghuya Burunji, this incident is reported as a very, very normal, what I told in the beginning, कि hill plain relationship is based on trade and rate. And they said we trade, but they also rate. There is no mention of thousands of people were captured as slaves. There is no mention that there was depopulation of Assam. Likewise, when we say Burundi, we also have Naga Puranji, we also have Jayantiya Puranji, we also have Kachar Puranji. In those Puranjis, it is not that Nagas were simply the headhunters and jisko manha usko gala kaat, don't know. Our research scholars, not under me, under Prof. MC, one of our research scholars has done thorough research on headhunting practices among the Nagas, and the research scholar is of the view that no, it was not that choice of the people that they will go and kill anybody and everybody. It was almost a regulated system. It was a regulated system. But British officers, Christian missionaries, they made it a point that all Nagas are headhunters and they kill people. They are not law-abiding citizens. So that's why when we see in Tripura also, we have Puranji dealing with Tripura, Tripuri Puranji. Recently, devious publishers in Guwahati, they have republished it. It was out of print for more than 10-20 years, but devious has republished it. And I request young friends, please try to have it, read it, along with indigenous voice in Rajmala, Srenimala. You can look into the Tripuri Puranji and then pre-colonial past of Assam, its relation with Tripura, its relation with neighboring area can easily be established. And that's why this, under postmodernism, when Mink and others have written about the importance, all we know, meta-history by head and white, I am not repeating it. So on the basis of that, we can look into it. And that's why, friends, to have a critique of colonial writings, we need alternative sources, we need alternative methods, and I close here my lecture with a note. Thank you to MBB College family for inviting me and giving this opportunity. Thank you all. And very warm hospitality from airport. This makes me coming again and again to Tripura, and now I have stopped counting how many times I have come to Tripura. Thank you all, thank you very much. If you have any query on a friendly note, we can discuss that. Thank you.